topics.
Okay. Last week, you said you wanted to talk about
Yeah, I had something.
politics.
Politics. Yeah.
Why do they matter? Should you give
Do they at all?
Should you give a
Really
fuck?
should.
Should you give a fuck?
The answer is
Maybe. Depends on what politics you're giving a fuck about.
no, really, truly, and honestly. Don't play with that. Get that out of my
I'm
shot.
sorry.
Get it out of my shot. Okay.
Yeah, and also too storage. Just real quick on storage.
Trump. No, I'm sorry.
Donald J.
Storage.
Oh, a video. The world of video is psychotic. Like I never really messed with video stuff. In photography, the world of photography is the most fart sniffing consumerism. Like, but at least there's like an element in. There's at least an element in like the photography world of like the camera you got with the camera you have is your best is the best camera you can have, and it's like you don't need to spend all this money. Just shoot. Just shoot your camera. Just go take pictures. And the same thing like in guns too. Like the hobby of guns is like ridiculous consumerism.
It's
consumer brain.
LARP brain is really the big killer.
Right. Well, and the money that's involved with that. But there's also there is an element of like when in that as well as like it doesn't matter if you have the best gear, best guns. If you're not shooting and you're not training with it, then what the fuck are you doing? Right.
Exactly.
Where with video stuff, it's like that they don't even care if you're shooting. It seems like they're like just buy this shit. It's like, well, you can't shoot yet because you don't have these lights.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't go shoot yet. You can't go shoot footage yet because you don't have this lens. You're not using this gear, so you shouldn't even leave the house. You shouldn't even start recording because you don't have your shit.
It is true. I mean, yeah, it's tough. There's some truth to it in the sense of...
I'm sure that, like... It's
mainly in the sense of, like... I mean, the thing with the world of video is that the technology is so... It's so much more in depth on a analysis level.
Yeah.
Like the pixel peeping and the, noise and all of these different elements of... It's like... there's a lot of technical details that you can really like break down and that theoretical consumers would care about.
Yeah.
But just like with guns or photography, I mean, at the end of the day, it's if what you're shooting is not interesting, nobody gives a fuck how much noise your image has. Yeah. But I'm kind of guilty of that. In the sense of, I buy expensive cameras, but I was always upfront about like I'm not skilled enough to use these yet. That's not really the point. Right. It's that I'm using it as a means to get into this with a way to without needing to like without needing to like think about what I need to get next, or whatever, and just like working within my means for the most part, but having fun with everything, and just making it work.
Yeah, and I think also too, like in the world of video, there's like within the world of video too, there's the element of this could make you money.
Yes,
there's like this could make you money.
Yeah,
like there's a lot of money involved. Where like photography does that too, if you're interested in shooting like weddings or if you're shooting like events and things like that.
Yeah,
or if you're like interested in being, some kind of portrait photographer and you're getting these deals or you're working with models and stuff like that. And
or boudoir,
you're like, I just got this camera. I just got this Rebel T3i. Get naked.
Oh God. The creepy old man.
Right. And so like there's like, but with video in the world of video, because there's a lot of like, I feel like there's probably a like more need for it, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot more avenues for those kind of revenue sources. I mean, realistically, I think the biggest contribution to it, honestly, is, you know, in the world of photography, from an from like a marketing standpoint, there's a really big market for like niche vintage stuff that people like go crazy over. Like, look at this cool effect that the Helios 44 creates and all that, and they go crazy for it in like actual social media, like marketing dynamics and whatnot. And so the market for selling photography as a thing, right? Like as a practice or as a gear involved or whatever the case may be, is not centered around everything new. You know, it's not about the newest camera necessarily. I mean, there's stuff like that. There's cool lenses that come out and whatnot. But in video, the market for selling video gear is way bigger and more lucrative than any other like industry hobby in the social media marketing space. I mean, like, it is a disease on YouTube. The term GAS, gear acquisition syndrome, is rampant in social media spaces and people who are, who make videos, and because it sells, like and I'm guilty of watching these videos because I have an interest in them, but like, I'm not out here like necessarily buying everything these people are recommending to me. I just think it's cool. I think it's cool to see this gear. I like the technical elements of it, but then I'll go watch a movie, and they'll be using like 30-cent cinefoil to achieve a shot when this guy on YouTube is selling me a $200 flag kit, and it's like, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just like, what you're shooting interesting? Does this gear help you make that shot more interesting? There's a really big gap. Like, there's a really
well, and that was kind of the thing. Is it was like I was just curious watching videos on, like, lighting or something, and it's like, okay, let me just show me different types of lighting, and then it would like scroll through like, best beginner lights to buy. If I could, if I could only have one light, this is the one. If I was to buy all my gear again, this is what I would buy.
The only light a YouTuber needs.
And I'm like, I don't just show me some lighting. I don't give a fuck. I'm not gonna buy anything. I just want to. And then it was like, that kind of turns me off from watching the video, because it's like, okay, I don't want to be like sold something like, and have like, oh, well, I need this light. I need this softbox. I need this shit. I'm like, I'm not buying that shit. I just show me the lighting. Show me the fucking
show things that you do with it.
Right. And we're because I used to like to watch those videos on like photography, and it would be like, okay, here's a portrait shoot in a studio background. This is what the light looks like if you shoot it straight forward. This is what you should look like. And I was like, that's what I want to see. I don't want to see, well, I'm using this,
no, and it's terrible. Okay, let's wrap up on that one. I will say, last week I listened to most of it. I mean, I edited it, but I also actually listened to it, and I had a serious case of droning voice. I don't know what was going on. No, me.
Oh.
Like, I don't know what was going on with me last week, but
you seem tired.
I was like, it was very like this, and I was talking like this all the time. I was very chill and in the moment and present. I wasn't that tired.
Okay.
But my voice just had like zero energy, and it already kind of sucks to listen to my voice, but like listening to that was like what crazy. The hell are you doing, Xavier? So I'm going to make a conscious effort
to be a little more,
stay on top of me about being
energized.
Is about being like saying things with meaning. Right?
Put some
emphasis on things, right? Okay. Really communicate with intention. So, topics.
Okay, topics.
Okay, I want to jump into this.
Donald Trump.
Not
with January 6th.
No, stop. I'm sorry. Okay, no, we're already getting off track. No, okay. So I have this problem.
Okay.
About. Okay, so I have this new rule. Okay, in my life, which is that if I'm not putting energy into it, it doesn't exist. It's not real. Okay, for me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That isn't to say that like, just because I'm not contributing or helping, the starving children in Africa problem doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means that me not like if I'm not putting energy into it, then like it's not useful in my life, right? It's not something I need to think about or dwell on or whatever. And so, love all my starving African children, but
shout out.
But so with this in mind, my engagement with politics has always been, not always, but insofar as I have been engaging with it, has mostly been a very like intellectual exercise. It's been an exercise in learning about as much data as I can gather about, different facts of the matter with regard to like, different institutions of political instruments, like whether it's the economy or legal policy or foreign policy, all these, disparate elements that government makes up, and just like gathering information about it, seeing how I feel and seeing what, effects are produced by certain outcomes or whatever. And it was all very interesting. It was, it's interesting information. It's just like learning about like any other subject of interest, whether if you have a subject, like a subject matter interest in math or something. But I realized that I was like emotionally involved in a lot of it without really interacting with any of it. Yeah. And this was producing like not negative effects on my life. So, oh shoot, I was going to do that. Never mind. And so I made that rule.
Okay.
Not really because of politics exclusively, but actually because of a lot of things. But,
sure.
But I realized when I applied it to like my political engagement, I wanted to find something that I could still like interact with politics in the ways that I find it interesting, but not without just like incessantly exposing myself to the toxic sludge that is the ever present and constant churning of political news and factoids and all of this stuff that goes on. So my interest is really in people.
Okay.
And in people's engagement with politics. And I feel like you're a good baseline that I can
I don't think I'm a good baseline.
You're not. Politically speaking, you're a terrible baseline.
I was gonna say.
But for my purposes.
Oh, okay.
It's a good baseline for my purposes, which is that for the most part, you are a little bit more conservative in nature and predisposition.
Okay.
Right. And in that, the thing that I constantly struggle with in today's political climate and the way that I see people engage with politics is, well, let me set up my framework real quick, which is that this trend I've noticed, and I haven't exclusively noticed, this is a concept that was kind of introduced to me, but a recent trend in history, it feels like there's been a lot less political ideologue, like traditional political ideologue disagreement, whereas it's not as much like traditional conservatives versus, liberal thinkers kind of thing. I find that distinction has become a lot more nebulous in recent years, and it tends to be a lot more of this establishment versus anti-establishment dynamic with people, where if people believe in the systems of government, they they want to work within those frameworks to like create better outcomes and generate, you know, better policies and you know, like use the instrument of Congress and the judicial system for their means and ends. And on the other hand, you have a bunch of people who feel very disenfranchised from that whole system and think that it's completely non-functional, essentially. Right. And so their engagement, kind of by necessity, is very cynical. And so they are like completely, they're like, it's all a facade, or there's no meaningful interaction you can have with this, and you know, it all needs to be reorganized in some way. And so that's been what that's what I've been noticing in at least American Western political climate as of late. And my interest in question to you and what I'm looking to understand and like cover a baseline with is like, how do you feel as someone who is coming from a more traditional conservative background and thinking and in action? How is it that you feel your values are getting represented by not only systems of government, but by people in general? And where do you feel the divide is between that spectrum?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of interesting in the sense of like the disagreements between most people now when it comes to politics is like, if you look at political like disagreement or political discussion or anything, whether that was done by people or politicians, you know, 20, 30 years ago, it was like their kind of baseline was like, the government's good and the government's good and it's working for the people. Mm-hmm. But these are some things that need to change to, you know, to kind of help that. And it was like usually the more liberal viewpoint was like, yeah, it's good and it's working, but these people are being left out, or these people are being disenfranchised, and we need to do things to make sure that they're not left out from this. And the conservative thinking was more like, or the disagreement would usually become from, you know, yeah, maybe we need to do something for those people, but the effects of you doing that are going to hurt this, and it's going to change these dynamics, and then we'll lose everything that we've been working so hard to get. Where now, even on both sides, the government and everything that's established is wrong and bad and fucked up, and I'm going to be the one to tear it all up and change it. If they're, you know, in the political thing, I mean, that's been like politicians' thing for the last couple years now, or last 2 elections or so, has been, you know,
drain the swamp,
or even Obama was, you know, change, you know, but even back then it wasn't as big of a thing as drain the swamp, you know. It's like this. But you see it from both sides, and it's kind of funny. It's because it's also like, that's one of the things that it seems like conservatives and liberals do agree on at this point. Is they're like, oh yeah, but they just don't agree on.
They both agree. Well, yeah, they both agree on not voting for Joe Biden. It's pretty crazy. So I have a clarifying question real quick on that, which is that the feeling that I get. I want to see if you agree with this more or less. The feeling that I get is that in the online discourse, which is dominated by, like, it's dominated by corporate, you know, powers for the most part, because these media spaces and everything that exists are governed by these tech companies. They have been, for the most part, co-opted by very radical movements, and I would say that it's both like radical left and right movements. That it tends to be like these spaces tend to be far more dominated by radical left people than right, but they like radicalness as a feature
still there.
is a feature that's definitely a defining characteristic of these. The thing I would push back on with people when it comes to the actual government institutions is that it seems like Donald Trump very specifically managed to create that same dynamic in the Republican Party, where there's like these warring factions within the party of like radical MAGA people and like what used to be traditional conservatives, and the overlap between those two is like there's very little isolation there. And I do think that has that fracturing has happened in the Democratic Party as well, but certainly it feels like not as much. And I wonder, for a variety of reasons, I wonder why that is, but I wonder, and part of my motivation for asking you the initial question of like your values being, demonstrated both by government institutions and people, and that gap, I wonder if you even agree with the premise at all, why it is that it seems like there exists this fundamental force in moderate politics that has taken a lot of space in the Democrat Party, with like Joe Biden representing this very moderate candidate, quote unquote, and for the most part being the party that can that are like more put together, right? And I think that that's true in a variety of ways, and I don't even think that Biden is actually that moderate. I think he demonstrably is the most progressive president in U.S. history. Although that's maybe not like a super high claim, because I think that the public kind of demands that in some respects. But the point of it is to say that like it seems like these radical forces are existing, but it's a strange thing to see that the Democrat Party has become this bastion of quote unquote moderation in the presence of these extreme forces. And I don't know how long that'll last, in the sense like I don't know if the Republican Party can finally rebuild itself outside of the context of Donald Trump. I don't know if the Democrat Party will continue to suffer this leftist spiral that's happening, where they're refusing to vote for Joe Biden because he's helping genocide in other parts of the world. It's like it seems like for whatever reason the American, like the actual body itself, Congress, DC, the House, those people are for the most part in as effective as they can be aligned around this moderate nature, but I don't see those people represented anywhere else. I don't know who these people are being I don't know who these people are, like I don't know who these people are getting represented by in these circumstances, other than the fact that like technically people like these people are winning their elections, right? Which is great, but the force that governs political sentiment is the people's voice, right? And it doesn't seem like the people's voice contains anybody who's willing to be like, no, we're okay with like normal. Sorry, I didn't mean to ramble all that out, but basically just like this weirdness I'm thinking.
I guess about. Like one of the things that has been, when I worked at my previous job, working in the shop, I got longer interactions with people, and I got a very wide variety of people. Sure. You know what I mean? And
you say you worked in a pawn shop.
Yeah, in the pawn shop. And so, I got from, poor as dirt people to, to wealthy people who just like to come in there and, you know, look for expensive stuff. And you would get to, you know, especially if something was going on in the news, you're in an election or whatever was going on, you got to have those kind of political conversations with people and kind of get a gauge on what they, how they felt about certain things or what they were thinking. And for the most part, all those interactions with those people, it was always very moderate, like in the sense of like how they felt about things. You know what I mean? They all of them were like, you know, all of them wanted things to just be calm, you know. It was you know, and then you'd have more conservative people, and they'd be like, you know, this and this is crazy, right? You know, that, you know, we're going to slow down on that. And then you'd have, you know, more left leaning people, and they'd be like, you know, conservatives, they'd be, you know, upset about trans people using the bathroom at Target or something, and be like, you know, I don't know about this, you know, this just doesn't feel right to me, you know, whatever. And then you'd have, you know, more left leaning people, and they'd be, you know, upset, you know, they'd be like, you know, I really feel like, you know, police brutality and things like police brutality and abortion and stuff like that would be kind of the, you know, their kind of concerns and things like that. But it wasn't that radical. It was stuff that you could pretty much agree with on either side, in the sense of like, you know, if you were more conservative, you could be, you know, you would agree with that. But also, you know, for someone who's saying, you know, police shouldn't be killing people, you could be like, yeah, I agree with that. You know what I mean? It wasn't like that far of a stretch.
Yeah, the sentiment of the message is agreeable by both parties. It's always the application that they like quibble about.
Right.
You know?
But it was never like extreme stuff that you see on the internet. It wasn't, you know, on both sides, most people were upset about both things. And
can you bring this up a little?
Like that.
Beautiful.
And even a lot of and then it also depended on age, you know, really depended on age. If you had older people, even older liberal people, they weren't sure about all this trans stuff. They weren't sure about all, you know, they were kind of really put off by all that.
Yeah.
And
I want to make a distinction to make it easier, which is that like I consider myself a liberal, in the sense that like I vote Democrat for the most part, and I believe in mostly progressive policy insofar as they work, you know, and the ones that don't, like rent control, are garbage and should never be, should never be. And I just want to make a distinction between like what the older people that you're talking about, like those are liberals, with a capital L, and then the young liberals, quote unquote, I would characterize as progressives.
Yeah.
Like that would be the term that I think is used, but I don't even really like that term either, because like I feel like there's a lot of overlap in terms of what I think is progressive versus you know, liberal policy, but for the sake of conversation, I think and then the distinction between conservatives as well, like I think like a traditional conservative versus I don't like to use the term MAGA or any like Trump Republican or anything like that, because I think it misses the institutionalization that the problem exists at. It's not like the man himself, it's that there's this greater sentiment. So I think anarchists, anarchist Republicans maybe would be the term. I'm not sure.
Well, but on both sides too, then you would have, you know, a few people that were very outspoken about whatever it was, and you know, but it was like, oh, there's so and so again. You know, he's going to want to talk about. You know, he's going to come in here. You know, there used to be a guy that would come in there all the time, and he was a older white guy tatted up, lived in the trailer park, was a felon. I don't know what he went through, but he was in prison for like 15 years.
Nice.
And all that kind of stuff. Big Trump guy. Big Trump guy. Every time he came in,
couldn't vote for him, but
yeah, he couldn't vote for him, but he loved them.
Yeah.
And and then on the other hand, you'd have more there was one or two like real progressive guys. There was kind of middle-aged like black dude that would come in there that pretty often, and he was very like progressive, and so he'd always want to talk about whatever, and at that time it was usually whatever evil thing Trump was doing,
yeah, I mean,
for that period of time it was they didn't really care, it didn't really matter what the new progressive idea was out or what was kind of popular in streaming. It was more like, how do we take down Donald Trump at that time?
Yeah, there was an interesting moderating effect on that, which is interesting. Like everything, all the oppositional force went against Trump, the president, rather than like the conservative ideals as a whole, or even just the forward progress of your own progressive principles or whatever it is you want. It was all just in service of like taking down Donald.
Right. Donald Trump should be in prison. He needs to be impeached.
Yeah.
He needs to be gone. And so that was a lot of the mindset at the time from the much more progressive people.
Sure.
Even a lot of even the more liberal people that would come in.
Sure. Yeah.
They didn't like him, but they were kind of like, it's just, this is how, this is what it is. We have a conservative president right now. We have a whatever. It's Donald Trump. This is a little silly.
Yeah.
Whatever. The election will come.
Yeah. These tend to be older people who have been through a few elections.
Right. And they're like, we'll move on.
Yeah. And
then it'll be over. He just keeps coming back. I don't know what's going on there, but
yeah.
But yeah. So, but compared when you compare, so if that was my exposure to it for a long time, and so that always kind of helped me kind of set my headspace in the sense of like when you see the crazy shit online and on social media and on TV and all this kind of stuff, and it's people friggin' doing crazy shit. And saying crazy shit.
The thing that sells. The best marketing material.
The best marketing material ever. And you'd be like, holy crap.
Yeah.
They really believe this?
Yeah.
And then you would talk to people. And then I interact and talk to people. Yeah, you
had some real reality checks.
And then they'd be, and none of those people would agree with that shit. Yeah. And then they'd be like, oh, okay. This only exists in this space but in the real world, it doesn't. Now, I think a lot of that has kind of shifted because there was definitely pre-COVID.
Yeah.
There was definitely a lot more of this difference between media online and regular people. And there was definitely this two separations of worlds to a certain degree. I feel like those have kind of came together more when everybody was in lockdown and that was what they were exposed to all the time. That's where they kind of embedded themselves in that space.
Right.
And so when they left lockdowns and went back to everything else, they kind of took it with them.
Yeah.
Or, they took it with them and also they spent so much time in those spaces that they're still going back to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're still putting stock in it. They're still listening to it. They're still following it. And
the rise of alternative media in the post-COVID era was insane.
Yeah.
It was insane. Yeah.
And so, so for me, it's it's frustrating in the sense because it's especially when it comes to stuff with politics and things like that, it's fun to talk about. I enjoy talking about it, but most of the stuff now is so strange and bizarre and weird and things like that. I didn't like talking about Donald Trump. I was sick and tired of talking about Donald Trump all the way back then, and it just drives me nuts that But like he's still this major point of topic, and the people that are like so into Donald Trump, like I just don't like I don't get it. Like it's not fucking 2016 anymore. You know what I mean? Like I guess that 2016.
Yeah, that was when he was elected.
Right, like
feels 8 years ago.
Yeah. It was like, it was exciting and funny and fun back then. You know what I mean? Because it was like, look at this. This is kind of wild. But it was also kind of that thing, like you knew that you're like, this isn't a good sign.
Yeah,
but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there was also kind of like those years that he was elected. It was kind of like, nothing that crazy happened in the sense of like, besides COVID. But that was
right.
But that was so towards the end.
Yeah, that was right at the end.
That I don't even think a lot of people attribute it. I don't think people even remember. Like their memories aren't good enough to.
Yeah, they don't remember anything pre-2020.
I mean, they don't even remember that Donald Trump was the one who pushed the vaccine.
Yeah.
I think Biden
still gets shit for that. Every time he talks at his rallies and stuff, he's like, Project Lightspeed.
Right.
We got the best vaccines.
We got the best vaccines. We got it. We got it out faster than any. They told us.
Everybody boos him. I don't know why. It's such a losing thing for him, but he really loves to take credit for it. And he as much as anybody deserves to take credit, I feel like it's the one thing you.
Well, but also knowing him too, he gets pissed off that Biden gets credit for it.
Oh,
even if it's not even like, not even if it's something good to get credit for, you know what I mean? Like, but he's like, hey, I just need to make the record shake. That was my thing. Yeah, it's like, so it is kind of frustrating now because and so much of that stuff is bled over that, like for me, when I look at stuff going on in politics and I look at that shit, like. I don't really see my ideas or like the way that I feel reflected in much of it at all. Just because so much of it is, just so much of it is just blown up and everything that you read about is so sensationalized. Yeah, if I go and I just read, if I go and read, okay, we're going to be voting. This is what we're voting for. And you can be like, okay. And then you see what gets passed. After the votes have been cast, and you go, oh, good. And then you go, oh, shit, that one got passed. And then, but there's no one to have like a conversation where you're like, oh, fuck.
Nobody's talking about, the 11th.
Right. Damn, they abolished Galveston County Treasury.
I literally think that was the 11th thing on the Texas ballot.
Right. You're like, what the fuck?
Or maybe that was 13th.
What does that mean?
What does that mean for Galveston?
What does that mean for Galveston County? Yeah. And no one's fucking talking about that.
Nobody gives a shit.
But they're going to want to talk. But
people really are excited to talk about, Donald Trump and his next federal court case.
Right. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So here's. So help me understand the framework.
Okay.
That you're looking for. Or, let's take a step back actually and talk about what the framework is right now, which is that I feel like people have a lot of legitimate criticisms of the government, the institutions, their functioning. Yeah. I mean, we both work corporate jobs. Mm-hmm. If the federal government had half the inefficiencies of that we see in a corporate environment, it would be doing incredible. Yeah. And the problem is the federal government has double the amount of inefficiencies that a corporation has because it's subject to so many more problems as a product of its its democratic nature and its
size of it
and the size and all of these and just like all these different interconnecting webs. It's always funny as a small example. Like it's always funny to hear people talk about our intelligence agencies as if they're at all the same.
Right.
It's like the FBI is constantly getting in trouble with the CIA and vice versa because they don't tell each other shit.
Right.
And then they fuck each other up. And it's like, guys, what are you doing? I mean, the FBI has enough trouble keeping track of its own shit. They're busy prosecuting people that for pedophile server farms that they set up as honeypots and then accidentally sold in an auction.
Right.
And it's like, hello? So the federal, there's a lot of legitimate criticisms to be had about the nature that these large scale, bodies work, because when you get a bunch of people together to work on things, it's not always the best way that it could possibly be all the time. It takes a lot of refinement, it takes a lot of effort. Okay, so that's legitimate. There's something very legitimate there, and I think that people are more and more exposed to it because it's like there's so much more reticent access, and the more like vitriolic or the more like sensational it is, the more you're encouraged to get outraged and interact with it. And so you see the spending budget of like a Florida police department, and they're buying Lambos, or something. And it's like, what is that? And then you think about and then you attribute that to like all federal police departments. And it's like you that's the point, is that you quickly get a really skewed perspective on how all of these things are interacting.
And I think too is like, when you get to the point where like, for a lot of people, where they shit's difficult, everything's expensive, shit's really expensive, everything's your taxes are high, you get a paycheck, you fucking see how much is taken out of your paycheck, and then you see something on the news, you see some police department spending X amount of dollars on fucking frivolous shit. School district that lost $8 million in stolen iPads or something like that. And you're like, what the fuck? You're like, and then, and you go to the store and you're trying to buy shit, and you're trying to buy a week's worth of groceries, and it's $300. And you're like, what the fuck? So that kind of stuff. And
it compounds.
Right. It compounds. And it's like, for most people, it's like, well, who do you, like who do you get mad at for that? You know what I mean?
Right.
And if it, the government is obviously the easiest thing to get mad at in that situation.
Right.
And, if there's not a mega corporation at close hand,
Well, it depends on your ideological leanings. If you're more progressively minded, you blame the nearest corporation.
Right.
If you are more conservatively minded, you blame the nearest government institution.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's really easy to pick one of those things and get pissed off and then get upset. And there's just 1,000 million things going on to further piss you off and validate why you're feeling pissed off about that. Cause you're like, if you're pissed off at the corporation, you'd be like, damn, look, Amazon employees trapped in the cage having to piss in jars, and then, if you're mad at the government, you'd be like, twinks in Congress getting railed or something, and your tax dollars are paying for the condoms, and and it's like you're getting fucking pissed off, and so and there's gonna be 1,000 TikTok videos to be like, oh, look at this. And I think too, there's also now there's so much access to information about because of the Donald Trump thing, the Freedom of Information Act, where all those government documents got declassified, and all that shit, all the horrible shit that pretty much people knew about was going on is now like open to the public and is readily available. So it was just great content for TikTokers to talk about diabolical stuff the government did in the 60s or whatever, and then you're like, holy shit, if they did that then.
What are they doing
now?
Right. Yeah, so that's part of what I wanted to actually touch on. Is that's really interesting to me.
Yeah.
Because you know, that's a really difficult thing to interact with.
Right.
You know, there's so many easy examples of government failings. You know, in the Obama years, it was the drone strikes and the NSA, the revelation that the NSA was basically, you know, Big Daddy and was keeping tabs on everyone. And you know, you get these big revelations in intervals of just ridiculous things. MK Ultra, you know, abolition of communist governments in South America, and it's like all of these different things. You know, funding of rebel terrorist groups, and you know, like just time after time, these failings of the government. And when you get into a conversation with someone about these things, you're exactly right. The thing that they do is they go like, look at all of these disasters and look how terrible the government and all of these things that are happening. And the problem is that as like the first words out of your mouth have to be, yeah, that all happened.
Right.
That's all true.
Right.
But then when you start to introduce any level of nuance or you engage with it at the level of like, okay, but it happened for these reasons.
Yeah.
And fundamentally, like, just like the stupid fucking Iraq war.
Right.
That was so, like, driven by American just need for vengeance.
Right.
That was perpetuated by this cycle of ideas surrounding what was happening in the Middle East, and we just needed an enemy to take this out on. And like the approval ratings for going into Afghanistan or to Iraq was like 95%.
Right.
You've never seen more agreement to go to war in your life.
Right.
You know.
Well, and that's kind of one of the things too, is that a lot of the terrible things that the United States government has done, a lot of them were extremely fueled by what the sentiment of the time was that the people wanted. And then the real crazy stuff, you know, that the government did, they were done by really small organizations within the government, like the CIA or the FBI.
Right, that's the other thing too. It's exactly right. It's like you had like one guy in the department of the CIA who was in charge of like psychological operations, and who had a budget of $10 million a year and needed to spend it, otherwise he wouldn't get it next year. And was like, oh, okay, cool, we can do this.
Yeah, let's just give like this. We got a small town in Africa. Let's test AIDS on it or something. You know what I mean? And he was like, and then it's just those small little government organizations that have tons of money that technically aren't even really like, they don't have to report that shit to anyone. You know, they can classify those documents and the fucking government can't even look at them. You know what I mean? You know, and so, you know, that's what, you know, like that's what, you know, as being someone who's into guns, that's what pisses me off about the ATF. You know, because
it's a worthless organization.
Right, because it's an organization that has an incredible amount of power that doesn't have that's incredible amount of power that can put laws into place that you can go to prison or be fined federally.
Right.
An organization of full of employees, not people you elected.
Right.
And they can just
they enforce the laws that they decide
that they made up.
Right.
And you can have a director or whoever's running the ATF can work there for 20 years, and then when he retires, a new ATF, you know, director can come in and completely change the rules. You know, and
horrible checks and balances. Horrible implementation of a government institution.
There's like, that's absolutely not. But a lot of those organizations get put in place because there was, you know, there was a need for it, and there was a big public outcry because of whatever.
FDA is a great example.
Right. The FDA was like, you know, nobody really gets pissed off at the FDA because, you know, they're
people want safe food.
People want safe food,
and they want their drugs that they take to be safe. You know.
Now, if you're in the world of, you know, food production,
or pharmaceuticals.
Or pharmaceuticals. You hate the FDA. You know what I mean?
They suck.
They suck. But for most people, you're kind of like,
The level at which most people engage with these institutions means that, like, even if they don't know anything about them, they're kind of grateful that they exist because they are protecting them in some ways. Here's what I feel like when I talk to most people that are like this, that are very much like, these are like, look at all these terrible things. The sense that I get is at the bottom of, like, the sentiment that they're getting to at the bottom of it is that there's a small group of people who are coordinating all of these terrible things. And on the one hand, that's absolutely true. And on the other hand, it's completely ridiculous. Just like we just said, it's absolutely true that at times you'll have these factions within government institutions or foreign bodies, policy institutions, even like congressional, certain congressional bodies or committees that have an undue amount of authority over, like, one particular thing, that will make a lot of decisions that you don't necessarily have, like, a huge role in, because the degree to which you, like, democratically came to that process was like you voted for a couple of those people that sit in those small committees. But the thing that, like, really, really bugs me, and this is why I said that, like, you're a good baseline to kind of jostle with, is that the thing that really bugs me about these people who have this underlying sense of a cabal that exists in various states at various levels and various forms. Traditionally it's the ultra wealthy, it's these, the socialites that you don't, you either don't see, or the ones that are in the spotlight are the ones that are governing, like, cultural, changes and all of that. And it's not even that I necessarily disagree on some levels with the nature of how, like, people that are in positions of authority and power will exercise it. My issue is that anytime I'm talking to these people, I'm totally lost. I don't know how you expect me to interact with this information and this, like, knowledge. Even if I assumed everything you were saying was true, that, like, at the most in the most extreme levels, it's like there's an underground lizard people that are taking over the bodies of our government officials, and like Joe Biden is a lizard in disguise or whatever. Even if I were to take that at face value and say, okay, that's true. We both have to buy groceries.
Right.
Tomorrow.
Right.
Please. Please.
Yeah.
And
you're like, for
that really bugs me.
Yeah.
I find it really difficult to understand how to like how to take these people seriously, because the problem is they are serious.
Right.
These people have strong feelings. These are people that, like, I love, that that inside of other domains of my life are incredibly intelligent.
Right.
And they're I'm going to use the term useful people. And what I mean by that is to say that they're not, like, paralyzed by the
thought that there's lizard people in the government.
the thought that there's lizard people walking around. But
vote them out. Vote out the lizards.
Vote out the lizards. Yeah. But
I don't like that. I love conspiracy theories. I don't like the lizard people one, because I've raised a lot of lizards, so I'm really kind of, I feel like I got
lizard slander.
I feel like it's lizard slander, because I've known,
I like lizards.
I like lizards, and lizards they're not really into politics like that,
Sure, I haven't met one. Yeah,
lizards really aren't into really controlling very much at all.
Yeah, they're more about controlling like their immediate environment with regard to food,
right?
And,
food and heat.
Yeah,
and a little bit of water to lick. You know, and yeah, they're not. Now, if they show me if there's footage that comes out of like a cricket truck showing up at the White House. And they just delivered 10 tons of crickets to that. Then I'll be suspicious. And I'll be like, all right, I think the lizards are involved here.
Something's going on here. Okay, so,
but,
and like there are certain things about it that are particular to me on the factual level where it's very much like there's so much we do know about. First of all, how inefficient and terribly run the government is. And all of these stories of just complete monumental just fuck ups and disasters on account of like one person, being a coke addict at the time or something in the 1950s.
Right.
That the idea that you could like organize a conspiracy of this level is absurd to me. So that's like one of my reservations. It's like one of my primary things. It's like very fundamental to me. Like my fundamental thinking is that people are basically incapable of organizing themselves at that degree. I don't see it in the real world, and I interact with the real world a lot. I interact with corporations. I interact with people, right? And they can barely keep their lives together. I interact with myself. I barely keep my own life together. Right. The idea that there's a council that are informed by all these. Anyway, the point is, and again, I'm wholly willing to concede that there are groups of people, committees, and people that are in charge. Hollywood, I think, is a fantastic example of one of these like quote unquote institutions that are heavily run by a bunch of good old boys that know each other and dominated the industry for so many years, and so they kind of know what happens for the most part and know the way that place is run and you see a lot of the disasters that causes, right? And so it's very apparent in so many ways. What is not apparent to me is this degree of organization that makes you I guess that's the thing, is that I feel like it makes any level of interaction with it impossible. And at that point, if you're going to present that to me, kill yourself. Like literally kill yourself. It's over for you. Like, what are you actually doing? If you're not propelled by that belief in some really, really extreme way, then you have no business, like, quote unquote, believing in it. There's nothing there that serves you or me in our relationship or your relationship with others or the world or what you're going to do tomorrow or the fact that your kids, that's the one that, oh man, I want to strangle people, is when I see people talk about this and they have kids and it's like, what are you talking about? Your kids are right in front of you. They have a whole ass future. I hope. Because you're rapidly accelerating them towards a non-existent one.
Right.
Like, at the very least, like, at least, but you have to, even if you have to believe in an illusion for the sake of your children, like, believe in that insofar as you need it to change your, like, what you want for your kids. Like, at least that. Anyway, I don't mean to ramble as much. I am looking to get your perspective on the matter of like the meaningful interactions that come of these kinds of conversations and the things that inform the reasons people think this way, and you know, just like generally your experience with all this.
I mean, I think most people, I think a lot of people, for the most part, they like to have their kind of wild, crazy conspiracy theories kind of stuff. I think that they like to have it. I don't know how much like it actually like dictates their life. You know what I mean? You know, like
very little, according to seemingly to most.
Right. And so, you know, you do have those people that are like just absolutely consumed by with whatever, and they're not able to leave the house because the air is poisoned, you know what I mean, by the government. But for the most part, you know, if some dude's walking around talking about the earth being flat or something like that, you're kind of like, maybe. I don't know. You know, like for me, it's kind of like, I think of myself as like a, you know, like if you were like a Mesopotamian, you know, like a farmer, and some dude came up to you and was like, he was like, you know, actually, I was just looking over some documents, you know, that kind of the biggest brains in the Fertile Crescent just came up with, and actually the earth is round. I'd be like, okay, you know, like that guy doesn't give a fuck, you know, if the earth is round or if it's flat, it's not going to change. He's like, okay, does that mean is a rainy season still going to happen? And then he'd be like, well, yeah, but that's actually because, you know, now that we understand that the earth is round, and we like, you know, so I kind of look at it the same way with those kind of people who are saying whatever. It is a little ridiculous because I love conspiracy theory. I love conspiracy theory TikTok because they're wild on there.
There's definitely wild things going on.
And I see the comments, and they're just, I love the videos. Absolutely love the videos that have a good amount of views. So like they have like, you know, couple hundred likes, maybe low 1,000 likes, you know, a couple hundred comments or something, but it hasn't like blown up and gone like to everyone's feed yet.
Yeah.
So all the comments and all the likes are from people who like follow the page.
Yeah.
And so
very invested.
They're all supportive of it, you know. I saw one the other day with the winter storm, you know, and it was somebody was like scanning over like radar for the whole United States, and they could see a place like out in North Dakota or something like that where, you know, where you can see kind of strange radar patterns, right? Looks like lines. And they're like, see, and then the comments are all like, oh yeah, they're using weapons. They're using laser energy weapons to manipulate storms. The earth hasn't had, they're just talking about shit that like the earth, we haven't had any natural weather in 30 years, all this kind of stuff. Everything's man-made. They're trying to accelerate the weather so that they can push global warming and green energy and all that kind of stuff. The comment section was very like, yep, this is what it is. This is, and you're kind of like, it's on one hand, it's hilarious, but on the other hand, you're kind of like, damn, these people are just like, they're like so invested in this that the government is controlling the weather. It was like, I made that joke. I was like, can you like imagine like they had that same stuff going on in caveman days, you know, be like, I know the chieftain, he's got a secret fortune teller that they're doing rain dances to fuck up this weather. I know the village has been coming together and we've been doing our rain dances, you know, but I know he's doing countermeasures. You know, like, did they have that shit going on back then? No, you'd probably get stoned. You'd probably get taken out and be like, all right, you can't be saying crazy shit like that. Get out. You're going in the pit. You're going into the tar pit. Now, you know, especially online, because it really is it really lets those people kind of congregate.
Well, it's specifically designed to embolden those people,
right? And so they really get in there. Like the funny one that I sent you, the dude fucking downloads a surround sound movie file, looks inside surround sound audio. What the fuck? What are these extra audio tracks? They got these subsonic levels that come in when there's bass sections. No, that's definitely a weapon that the government is putting in our movies.
It's hypnosis
for to destroy our brains. I'm like,
okay.
Bro, you're on TikTok, bro. there's ever a
oh God,
energy weapon,
if there's ever a weapon developed by a government, like a large government body, it was
destroy brains. Yeah, you're on it, dude.
China's TikTok.
You posted that on a phone, bro.
Oh man. But okay, I don't want to spend a bunch of time rambling about.
I got one more point too.
Okay, go.
Because this also gets me. This also kind of is another thing that a lot of those type of people do.
Yeah,
and I see it all the time on the UFO spotting places and this UFO spotting subreddits. Bro will post a video that he took of something weird in the sky, right? And he'd be like, "I saw this. I don't know what this is. Like, this is really strange." It blows up. The comment section is like, "This is it. This is the video. This is the proof of aliens. This is not something natural of this world.
This is not a drill.
This is not a drill. This is the one, guys.
Yeah.
This is the video. This is the best footage I've ever seen." Then somebody will come into so everyone's just bought in immediately. Yeah. Somebody in the comments section will be like, That's an awesome video, but this is what it is. It's a weather balloon. It's whatever the fuck.
Yeah, it's something very simple.
It's something very simple. They'll post they'll post a link to pictures of what it is. You look at it and you go, "Oh yeah, it is."
Yeah.
And then everybody replying to that is like, "I don't know about that." Then they're skeptical to that. Like the video that they saw some random fuck just post, bought in immediately. The thing that shows actually what it is, I don't know about that. And I think that's because people, they want to believe. They want to believe something.
No, but
and so that's the thing is that like they're just,
I do too.
But no, you don't want to believe. You don't want to believe that hard though.
You're right. I don't want to fucking deceive myself.
Right.
I don't want to be a fucking illusionist on myself.
It was magic, bro.
I love
Houdini. I saw him. He pulled a rabbit out of the hat, bro.
I have so many experiences in my life that are unexplainable by science, that are as yet unexplored. Yeah. You know, in the material world, material understanding of material world. I love astronomy and the study of space and the possibility of life forms. Yeah. And you know, the depth of knowledge that we don't have is extraordinary. It's such an incredible thing, right? I mean, just something as simple as the nature of subatomic structure. Like, what the fuck is going on at the quantum level? Like, all these different questions that are that if we really tried as a species, we could continue to explore the depths of these mysteries and uncover secrets about the world, us, you know, all of these things. And it's so fascinating. It's so cool. There's so much there. And it's dominated. It's dominated by these people who don't take it seriously. Yeah. They're just so vested in looking for green that they'll see it in purple. And it's like, guys, you're like, I want to go with you. I want to see aliens. I want to interact with them. I want like all of these things. Yeah. This is not it. This is not it. Looking at random fucking videos on Reddit that show these balloons in the sky. That's not it.
I saw my favorite one the other day. It was this guy. He's out at some park in California, some like big natural forest out at a lake, and he's out there. It's the middle of the night, and there's this light flying in the sky, right? And it's freaking zipping and it's moving crazy. And he's out there with one of those Chinese really powerful lasers, the laser pointers, you know, the green laser, and he's shining the laser pointer at it. And when he hits it with the laser pointer, it freaking it like shoots super fast, far away, and then it comes back, and he hits it with the laser pointer, it zips around. And again, the comment section was like, "Holy shit!" Like that, the way that thing is moving, they're like, the way that thing is moving, that's nothing man-made can move that fast. And then one of the comments was, big post is this dude, and he's like, stop sharing this fucking video. That I'm a drone pilot out there. That's my fucking drone. Stop pointing fucking laser pointers at my drones, because it's illegal to shine lasers at things in the sky.
Yeah.
And you're damaging my shit. And you go to his page,
and he's got videos.
He's got it's him. He's a drone pilot out there. He's got videos of him flying around the lake.
Yeah.
He's got but all the replies to that were up here. Now the government plant comes in to hide the, and then or they were arguing with him whether it is illegal or not to shine laser pointers at shit in the sky. It's 100% illegal.
Super illegal. It's really bad.
Right.
The FAA takes that shit very seriously.
And so I was like, oh well, case closed on this one, but not for these people.
Yeah.
And so
okay.
So, but yeah. it's that. I think it's a lot of people, because there's a lot of really complicated shit. There's a lot of really interesting things out there, but people want like the answer, right? They want.
No, they don't.
And they don't want the answer. They
don't
want
the
answer. Confirmation that what they think is true. And so they'll go.
Okay, so what is that?
They'll go.
No. What is that? What's going on there?
I think it's just a people thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Because you'll see dudes fucking be like, if you take all the letters in Donald Trump's name and you line up the letters and then you
the
put
anagram people,
right? You
really go crazy,
and then you're like, look, this isn't a coincidence, bro. And you're like,
yeah,
okay, just because this has got. You're like, look, it's the Antichrist is coming.
Yeah, no.
Because look how many letters.
Yeah,
the numbers. And people just love that shit.
Here's something that's true. Okay, is that fundamentally one of our most basic features as a species is that we have an insane amount of computational brain power relative to any like most other like creatures of our kind.
Yeah,
right. We have computational brain power that's unmatched in a variety of ways. And what that means is that needs to be focused.
Yeah.
And the most important thing to focus on are the things that happen again and again.
Sure.
Right? We are incredible at pattern recognition.
Oh yeah.
It's a wonder.
Yeah.
Now, with that, it does seem like the drive, the motivating force behind that pattern recognition, that pattern search algorithm, seems to be informed by this notion of meaning that we have, right?
Yeah.
And meaning, like something that's meaningful is like, it's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like something is meaningful if it nourishes me, right? So I can pattern recognize a bottle of water and see that every bottle of water is basically the same, and you know, and that's useful to me.
Foot job from the grippy shot socks. Unregistered machine guns. That's top hierarchy needs for me.
So that's like a layer. That's another like layer up. Abstracted.
Useful, high up there.
And it seems like when humans get to a certain degree of meaning calculus, right, which is to say that like their needs are pretty much taken care of. They have their formula for surviving and quote unquote thriving is pretty easily set relative to most of human history.
Right.
And then it goes awry. Yeah. And so they start going like, okay, what do I do with all this computational brain power?
Yep.
I don't understand why my instinct is to be curious.
Yeah.
And I should say, I shouldn't make it so personal. This is the most intelligent people that I know and admire in my life.
Yeah.
The instinct is to find reasons to disbelieve.
Okay.
Right? Because when you're curious about something, the easiest way to start narrowing the field of information is to discard things that don't apply.
Yeah.
Right? I don't understand how people reverse that mechanism in their lives, where instead of like the confirmation bias, it's a real bias.
Oh yeah,
like it's a powerful effect. I don't understand what's happening. Okay, when I say I don't understand what's happening, the only thing I mean by that is that I understand. I can break it down neurochemically. I can break it down psychologically. I can do all of that.
Yeah.
What I do not understand, when I say that, is that I don't know how to talk to these people. I don't know how to be in relationship with these people or their ideas.
Yeah.
And this is fundamental to why I started this conversation in the first place about politics.
Yeah.
Is because in a democracy, the fundamental aspect of its substance is that people engage in the process of discovery and discovering the things that would make society better.
Yeah.
And when you have factions of people that, despite the fact that they are a vast majority of just minority groups that exist in minority elements, the only way I've seen people engage with that in history effectively is civil war. Right? Like, that's the ultimate end of people coming to such a fundamental disagreement about the structure of their society, that's like it leads, that's the disruption. That's the level of disruption. And the thing I can't figure out is that I see these minority groups of factions that are for the most part disorganized, although now becoming a lot more integrated because of this anti-establishment sentiment. The thing I can't figure out is, why are we not in a civil war right now? Why am I not gunning down dipshit liberals or progressives who believe that Joe Biden is a genocidal maniac who should not only be, thrown out of office, but imprisoned for his war crimes on Israel? Like, I should be in the streets. Like, I see these protests on Houston streets, and from my perspective, because I'm not able to have a conversation with these people, naturally, what that means to me is I should be gunning them down, because how do I live amongst these people? But okay, the point, I'm not gunning anybody down for any government agencies that are listening. Like, that's not what's happening. I'm genuinely struggling to understand what my responsibility is as in a democracy to be in relationship with my fellow citizens to the degree that, like, even though these people clearly are mostly ineffectual. I mean, protesting is important. It's an important practice, and I don't believe that every protest that I disagree with should be gunned down fundamentally. Right. It's that when it gets to these fundamental levels of society, that's when it starts to come. But the point. I think. Sorry. Go.
So I think that's one of the really cool things about where we're at in the sense of like civilization and as a democracy is that you can have those people, you can have people that have whatever, and have things that they really disagree with and about and all this kind of stuff, and they can do the protests and they can do all the kind of shit, and it doesn't become a civil war, because the foundation of how everything operates is strong enough to handle that. You know what I mean? In the sense is like, they can be mad, they can be mad. I mean, hell, during 2020, you know, when you had like the George Floyd stuff, you had hundreds of major cities around the United States, fucking people attacking government buildings, burning, you know, businesses, attacking cars. And 6 months later, we're fine from that. You know, that didn't cause a civil war. It was, you know, it was kind of looked like it, you know,
at times,
but like we were able to bounce back from that, during, January 6th, we had fucking people storm the Capitol buildings and, act like they were going to fucking burn down and pull out politicians and kill them in the streets and stuff like that. It didn't happen. And fucking the next day, they cleaned up the shit, they send out some dudes to come sweep up all the fucking trash. It was back to business. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's kind of one of the cool things that we've set up a system that's strong enough to handle that. I mean, you can see in other parts of the world that shit ain't as strong. And you can have you can have just a crime organization that's got enough money and enough people, and they can fucking just destroy a government.
Yeah.
And so, for me, it's kind of like, well, I'm glad that things are the way that they are because, and I'm also glad too, on the other hand, that they can have a protest like that and not be, and the government not have to step in and kill everybody and do all that because it is a serious threat to the structure of everything. You know what I mean? Because you can see that in other countries too, where it's like you can have a gigantic protest, cities can be burning, people can be marching in the street, and the government has to come out there with tanks and run over people.
Jesus.
And it's like, because if they didn't, it would be a serious threat
to their continued existence.
To the continued existence of that government body. Where
I guess I'm just feeling a really big disparity. I think, how patriotic of you, I know, really cucking out for American democracy here.
I felt dirty saying it.
But the disparity that I feel and the reason that I have such a strong visceral reaction to these things is that the claims made by the people who are leading these revolutionary bodies. I mean, January 6th, BLM riots, the Palestinian protests, all of these things. The feeling that I get is that the disparity is, if they truly believed what they're claiming, this should be a bigger deal. Like our government institutions should actually not be able to survive that level of political dissent. Dissonance, I should say. Like fundamentally, January 6th is a perfect example of this. If I truly believed that the foundation of our country, elections, if they were rigged, if I truly believed that, and it was in particular perpetuated by the people that existed in power at the time in an effort to steal power, I would 100% be at that Capitol building.
Sure.
And I would 100% be demanding recompense.
Right.
And my and so I can go with everybody that far. What I can't understand is that they all went fucking home the next day. What the fuck are you doing?
Well, because they didn't believe it that much. Because if they really believed it that hard, they would have died there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
they would have died there.
But that's what I'm saying. Like,
well, but that's also too because they were also all feds. It was clock out time.
All right.
No. But exactly.
Yeah, but then that's my point. Is it like, because okay, where's the serious people? Because where are the people who are the people that actually believe in these ideas? Like, where are the people that are actually
my hope
making an effort?
My and maybe maybe it's not true, but at least for me, it seems like the people who really really care and really are serious about it and are going to give it their all, know that, you know, that shit don't really work unless they got a lot of them and a lot of people that are, again, willing to die there. That they have to go about making those kinds of changes a different way, and whether that comes from, you know, whether that comes from voting, which a lot of times seems, you know, I think for most people feels like powerless. You know what I mean? Like, I think, you know, voting for most people, majority of people, you know, they feel like it doesn't matter, especially if you believed that it's all rigged. And so your vote.
Yeah, I don't know why you would vote if you believe the election was rigged. I don't understand.
But I think the people that like truly actually really believed that something was, and it was that something was wrong, or like went awry, and they were going to make it, and they were like, this needs to be corrected. You know, maybe hopefully they're working to become head of their HOA, and then become, you know, there's other ways, like in a democracy, that you can enact those kinds of changes,
right?
Throughout, and so hopefully, you know, whether you agree with the people or not, hopefully they're doing that. You know what I mean? Because if they really believe that and they're doing it the proper way, they'll and there's enough people that agree with them, then they'll get far. Otherwise, they'll get to as far as they can, and then they get dead in the water because nobody wants to fucking vote for some crackhead who really believes that. You know what I mean? And so,
okay,
but there's that. Or people have so many of their needs met that they're like, you know what? I really don't agree with this, but that's going to cost me my Netflix subscription. You know, because like even for me, like, you know, I could lose, you know, obviously, you know, I've got a wife and I've got children, so that makes things a little bit harder. But if it was just me, there's a lot of things that I don't need. Like, there's a lot of things, like modern things.
Yeah.
But running water, that's a tough one to lose.
Yeah.
That's the one that makes me go, ooh. Because I can see, like, no electricity. Fuck electricity. I don't need that shit. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah.
Like, electricity is nice and all, but fucking people live forever with no electricity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But running water, that's the thing that everybody's like, first thing.
We've been around a long time.
You know what I mean?
With running water. I mean, we always situated ourselves next to waterways for that reason. Yeah.
I mean, running water. Like, you know, I know, you know, growing up with a lot of my neighbors who grew up in fucking the jungles, you know, especially like in El Salvador and stuff like that, they had nothing.
Yeah. And
they're telling me about living in, you know, houses with, you know, cinder block walls and thatched roofs that are made out of palm leaves and, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, that's not that bad. That's not that bad. But then when they're talking about pooping in the woods and having to dig a hole to go poop in the woods, I'm kind of like, ugh.
No showers?
And even no showers. I think I get away, you know. I could kind of do it, you know, a nice shower, could go over, you know, a communal bathhouse or something like that. I could do with that. But I hate public restrooms. So like a communal bathroom is definitely maybe a step up from squatting in the woods. But I don't know. Pooping next to, you know, some Guido. I don't know if, you know, I don't know if I really like that. The running water, not being able to wash my hands, that's kind of big for me. But everything else, electricity, don't need it. You know, electricity, all the other modern comforts, I don't really need it. But
what you're saying is there's a severe lack of there's the severe lack in conviction is a direct result of a severe lack of lack.
Correct. Yeah. If I was already at the point where it was like all I had left was running water, I might be willing to risk it. You know what I mean? I'd be like, all right, I'd die for this because all I'm going to lose is fucking running water, which is nice, but I'm not going to need it if I'm dead. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when your shit's bad, when your shit's at a certain level, then, but when you got so much nice shit.
Yeah. When your new iPad is
right, you're like,
it's coming in tomorrow with Amazon Prime delivery.
Yeah,
you're kind of like, I gotta go home and pick up that package, otherwise someone's gonna steal it.
And I mean, that's what you see it. People shit talk on fucking everything. Like we always make fun of all the people with the fucking, people who hate capitalism, and they got their fucking decked out setup with all their fucking stuff product of our friend capitalism. But so you're like, okay.
Anybody who's, by the way, I'm throwing this out there. Anybody who says I don't like capitalism, I don't believe in capitalism, blah blah blah. If you order from Amazon,
you're done.
Go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And then on the Chinese dick suckers too. They got capitalism over there. They should do it differently. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like they do a hybrid theory. Basically, they do it more like the people. It's kind of communist for them, but all the businesses and government and everything, they're big on capitalism. Yeah, and they get the people they get the benefits of that. They get the negatives of having
almost might be better. In some ways,
right?
It's definitely easier for the government.
Honestly, yeah,
it's just a matter of running people over with tanks every once in a while.
Right. And having if you're willing to like give up all your freedoms, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, if you never had them before,
right,
it's not like you're giving up anything.
Yeah, but at least over here you get the illusion of it. You know what I mean? And at least you get to have protests.
It's true.
You don't get that protest over there. Not without serious repercussions.
Yeah, not without tanks showing up.
Not without tanks showing up. I mean, remember what was that? The Beijing or the Hong Kong stuff?
Oh yeah, a couple years ago. Yeah, dude.
And
that was wild. Okay, so yeah, definitely, this is a future topic.
Okay,
I want to touch on something we've talked about a little bit. Something I mentioned. This element of meaning in our lives and what that is and what that speaks to and how people interact with it now and how society has been deeply impacted by, you hear often a lot this phrase that's come of age called the crisis of meaning, in modern society. And it's something that really interests me because you're exactly right. I think one of the fundamental attributes of meaning is conviction.
Sure.
Like, you can't pursue meaning unless you're convicted about its truth.
Sure.
Right. And so that lack of conviction is really concerning, and for a variety of reasons. One of which is that we have a bunch of retards storm the Capitol with half-ass conviction, and then they go home the next day, and you have to wonder,
right?
Like,
it'd be like if like the Boston Tea Party, they showed up to go throw the tea in the water, and they were like, wait, we have to lift these boxes.
Yeah.
And put them in
we
the
gotta
water?
bring crowbars and crack them open.
Fuck.
God damn it. I got, my wife is making.
You know what? They're only taxing it like 2%. It's not even that big of a deal. I'm sure in the future, if it goes up, I'm sure people will do something about that.
Yeah. So
I'm gonna go to my Twitter blog and write about how it's fucked up. But
Okay. So.
That's also the other thing too, I think.
What's that?
I think that like the online activism is so easy, and so accessible, and feels like it has an impact.
Yeah, it triggers all the same circuitry for people,
right? It
ticks all the boxes,
right? If you have a post that blows up online, I mean, it feels good.
That's got to feel like better than winning an HOA election.
Right. I mean, it's like, it's got to feel, if you get a post that when you get a post that's hot, and it just blows up and it's making the rounds and it's making movement, and especially if it's like mostly positive You get a couple haters in there, but it's mostly positive. And especially if the haters are your enemies, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then it's like, oh, it feels so good. And so it's like, then you feel like you're not.
You're more emboldened.
Right. You're more emboldened. And you're feeling like you're doing something. You feel like you're super effective.
Yeah.
You know, because otherwise.
Why are people paying attention to you?
Right. Otherwise, you go up to the Capitol. You go storm the Capitol. You're surrounded by, a couple hundred other, guys that all look the same.
Yeah.
You get lost in the crowd. You got to do stuff.
I don't know, that shaman was definitely.
Yeah.
He was decked out.
Yeah, but he was one dude there. You know what I mean? He did the bold move of being like, what makes me really stand out?
That's true.
If I wear this buffalo skin on me, and which.
Props to him. That's trip.
Like I said, he had the right idea, and he was like, "This will make me stand out." But if they all showed up in buffalo skins, lost in the crowd. So I think there's an element of that too. Is that it's just way too easy to feel like you're being really effective, and you're being because everybody else who feels the same way is sucking your dick when you made this great post and everybody's congratulating each other because they're like, oh my God, you're doing something, you're doing good work.
Yeah.
You did nothing. You did absolutely nothing. You did absolutely nothing. I mean, that would be like, that's the same thing as like showing up to, if they had the January 6th, rally in, Kentucky and at a event center. And everybody just showed up to the, the banquet hall, and they all got to stand up and say, "This isn't right." And then everybody clapped, and then they went home. You know what I mean? Like on lines like that, you leave it feeling like, yeah, we made a change. We got movement going. But
yeah, there's something really interesting about that. It's something the way you lay it out, it made me think. One of the major things that I feel like I've missed as an aspect of this dynamic you're talking about.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because like it's particular with people like us with ADHD is that the very like visceral and palpable sense of achievement that's generated by grand acts are so intoxicating.
Yeah.
They're really addictive in ways that small, deliberate steps
never
are not.
Yeah.
I was talking to my therapist this week and describing the process of editing the last podcast we recorded. And in complete contrast to like a previous version of myself, like both unmedicated and also mentally, just a little more foggy. The process that I took to edit that podcast was incredibly different from my usual experience in the past, which is that I sat down, I started working on it, I came up to a barrier immediately, and I was like, okay, let me figure this out. And then I came into another barrier, and I was like, okay, let me figure this out. And then I realized like, okay, this isn't worth doing this. So I had to transfer it all over to another editing program. And then I had to figure out how to do that. And I came at like, I was working on it for like 8 hours, and the first 6 hours was just getting it into prep phase that I could like actually work on it.
Yeah.
And then I started working on it, and I finished it the next day. Like I did half of it one day and like a couple hours, and then a couple hours the next day I finished it. And in that whole process, never did I feel like 10 out of 10 happiness. Even at the end when I finished it, I was like, nice.
Yeah.
It's done. And that was it.
Yeah.
And every step that I took along the way that was necessary, because it was like learning a particular skill or figuring out how to do a one particular thing in this editing software or whatever it was. Previously, like my ADHD would make me like go, to the moon with everything of like, I need to figure out, like, I need to become the best editor ever before I can even start working on this. And so I would be watching videos about the whole software and trying to take it all in. And then I would get discouraged at some point because I'd lose that passion and emotion of it, and I would drop it.
Yeah.
And I would be like,
another thing.
Yeah. It'd be another thing that I just like gave up on.
Yeah.
Whereas with this, I took small deliberate steps along the whole way, and every step and every barrier that I came up against, I took the easiest solution towards. Like, I wasn't sat there like, oh, I got to figure out the entirety of like the way this tool works. You know, it was those small deliberate steps, and by the end of it, I was like, okay, cool, that's now done. Like, I got it uploaded, and I was like, all right, on to the next one.
Right.
And in analyzing that whole process, because I noticed it while I was in the middle of it, I noticed that like, this is very different from my typical experience. And noticing that, like, and applying it to this context of what we're talking about of like people like lacking conviction and all of these things, is that I don't know how much of it is a property of like modern society and the ways that it's set up, you know, like this instant access to immediate gratification and in various ways, just not having very good incentive structures for making long-term progress on things, you know, and this sensationalism we have about everything. It's hard to know how much of that to blame on just the way society is organized. And then certainly like just us as creatures being wired that way in a variety of ways, and modern society just being more equipped to like make that more extreme, versus, and here's where you know the layers start to get peeled a little bit on this crisis of meaning of, versus how much people are actually taking an active part in their lives and the decisions they make and the ways that is informed. Yeah. Right. So at every level, like with me, you know, I now take medication in an effort to help me with a neurological disorder, because the way my brain is wired makes me predisposed to think and organize myself in specific ways that are detrimental to being successful in a lot of things. Right. Similarly, the way that my parents raised me informed aspects of my habituations and my character and everything that make things easier or more difficult depending on the lessons that I was given. Right. And so, you know, these multiple layers and stages of human activity, and how that's informed. And I'm curious, is, you know, I think I have an answer to, you know, how to interact with that. Right. But I'm curious for you, what would you say, especially as a parent? Yeah. You know, you have sons. What are you most, how is it that you as a parent and in your personal life, how is it that you foster authenticity in your life and in your children, such that, you know, you have these layers that inform your behaviors and all of these different things, and you know, they all come together to make a composition of beliefs and actions and habits. But when I say authenticity, I'm meaning to express the thing that questions all of those things, the things that organizes those things, the person that really and truly is taking an active role in the way that all of that happens. How is it that you in your life foster that essence?
Well, I guess I don't like doing things that I feel like aren't that important to me and to my family in that sense. And I guess like, you know, for me, because, you know, I like to do characters, and I like to play, and I like to like do things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But me being like authentic, and me being like doing what I really care about, and being like who I want to be is very important, I guess, in like contrast to that, you know?
Mm-hmm. And
so, you know, I know with me in my life, it was like, I always knew that, I don't know why, but I just always knew that like I wanted to be self-sufficient. I wanted to have a family. I wanted to get married. I wanted to have kids. That was like something that I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to have a good relationship with my wife, and I wanted to have a good relationship with my kids. And so those are the things that are like important to me. Yeah. Like top level important for my life in that sense.
Okay.
Is having a good and close relationship with my wife and my kids.
Mm-hmm.
Then, you know, the rest of the kind of stuff, you know, is I wouldn't say that it's like secondary, but at least for me, I can kind of build it around that in that sense. So, you know, when I started having kids, it kind of changed my mindset about a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Just naturally. It didn't happen very fast.
Sure.
But it was a pretty big like difference in my life, in the sense of like before and after, and what was kind of like most important. But I don't know. It just, it's one of those things where it was like, it was one of those things where it was like, it was like you know, that's what I wanted to do. And I felt like, okay, this is what I need to make that happen. And then it wasn't that big, like, it wasn't that difficult of a thing to hurdle once I already had my mind set on that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know, like we went to a birthday party over the weekend. I didn't want to go to.
Kids' birthday parties. You wanted to work on your sewing machine.
I wanted to work on my sewing machine. Kids' birthday parties, and it's a couple that we've been friends with for a long time. Okay. Like, it's a couple that we've been friends with since we were like in high school, and so we've known them for a long time. And then they got married, and then they had kids and all that kind of stuff now. And they both work good jobs.
Mm-hmm.
They both work good jobs. They make good money. They live in a nice house. They got nice cars, but they seem miserable. Like they just look and exude misery. And me and my wife were talking about that because it was like I feel bad for him, because I'm like, man,
why are you so miserable?
Why are you so miserable? And, you know, but when I have conversations with him, you know, about all the kind of stuff, when we're talking about the kids and we're talking about all that kind of stuff, it's like they both have to work they're both working full time. And, he's a teacher and she's a nurse and they're working full time. And the kids are in, they're all little. They're around the same age as my kid, and they have another one on the way. She's big old pregnant. And I was talking about, oh, you're off for Martin Luther King. And she was like, yeah, I was going to be off, but I decided to pick up another shift and, and all that kind of stuff. We could use the money to work on the holiday pay and all that kind of stuff. And that was another thing. I was talking about money. They bring up money in every conversation. And so for me, it was like, okay, their most important thing is money. Yeah. Their most important thing is money.
They don't have that security yet.
And they don't, and money's fucking hard for me too. But it's like, I'm not consumed by this fact, like, oh fuck, I need to work all this so that I can have a brand new car. And parents, I see it all the time with parents. It's like, they're like, oh, we need it so that our kids can do this because we have to both work so that the kid has to go in daycare. But over the summer we're going to Disneyland.
Yeah,
it's like the kid doesn't give a fuck. I mean, sure, going to Disneyland's awesome, but I think he'd rather, be around his parents. You know what I mean, and not have to be around his parents who are miserable and suffering all the time.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. It's one of those strange things, and it was really, the vibes were just weird with that in that sense, because it was like,
what are you doing?
Yeah, it was just like, what are you doing, man? And
would you say you've always had did you ever have a point where you realized your idea of success changed and you were like, oh, I need to do something else, or this particular thing that's bugging me a lot really shouldn't be, because it doesn't matter that much in the equation of what the things I care about are?
Yeah, I would say probably in the sense of one, never really having money, growing up poor and not getting shit and not being able to have all that kind of stuff. And so when I was working and older, I was like, oh, no, I want money so I can have the shit that I want.
Yeah.
But then I think my context changed for it a little bit when I had kids.
Yeah.
And I realized that I could buy the kid a cool toy and they'd love it and be excited and play with it. And then, a couple days later, they could give a shit about it. It's lost all its novelty. And that moment when you gave it to them and the excitement and the happiness and all that stuff was awesome.
Yeah.
It was awesome. But, and I joke about this with my wife, is that me and my wife are the kids' favorite toys in that sense. Is they never get bored of us. They always want to play. They're always I can go and interact. If I go and I'm excited and I play with any of my kids, they're just as excited and just as happy as if I give them a brand new toy. And so it was kind of I kind of realized, and especially you recognize it when they're a little baby, because that, we could be living in a mud hut and they don't care. As long as their immediate needs are being met and they're there with their parents, they're fine. And so I was kind of like, okay, for my kid, I recognize for my kids to have a fun and good life, the most important thing would be to, for me to be there, and for my wife to be able to be there and be able to just interact with them and just be there with them and not be like, oh fuck, I can't right now because I got to go to work or whatever. And
yeah, it sounds like in answer to my question about how to foster authenticity in your kids. It was like, it really just kind of sounds like it boils down to like demonstrate it
Yeah.
to them, like be around to show them what that is. And, you know, that translates across domains. Like the question, one of the follow-up questions I was going to ask was like, what if like your son Ezra gets really passionate about astrophysics one day, like when he's old enough to really, you know, dive into any particular collegiate level topic or whatever. And I was going to be like, ask you to be more specific about, you know, encouraging and fostering that passion. But honestly, I think it's funny enough that like the simplicity of it is in your answer is that like, of course he would feel encouraged to go do that, because there isn't a barrier there to say that like he wouldn't be able to, or that as demonstrated, like his parents are clearly demonstrating that they do what they want.
Right.
And in the field of possibilities, they could be doing other things, but they are doing this.
Right.
You know, and you know, and that, you know, that varies across people and in all kinds of different ways. But fundamentally, for children, like young children especially, but I would say even for young adults, I mean, that was my experience of having a father figure introduced to me later in life in my teenage years, because my father was very absent because of working a lot. He, you know, that father figure didn't tell me anything specific. He just demonstrated that he was doing what he loved. Yeah. And he put everything he had into doing that. Yeah. You know, and some of that was loving his family and demonstrating, you know, and being really honorable in various ways. And so then the second follow-up that I was thinking was, you know, in conversation that you had with that couple. Yeah. What do you think? How do you start to help them? What does it look like to really make an impact in people's lives when they're not living in that space? Yeah. They don't have those, you know, those characters. Obviously, you know, it still holds true that you should be demonstrating you love, you know, you actually enjoy life. Right. And even though you drive a 1994 Toyota Corolla and you're perfectly happy doing so. Right. And you don't have, you know, the new Toyota Highlander to take all your kids in, or whatever, to take them to soccer practice. Like, obviously the demonstration part is probably the most important. Like, you need to live your values, otherwise people don't, you know, like, it won't matter. But really, like, if you were to take an active approach in that situation, what does it look like, do you think, to make that impact?
I think is knowing, I guess, would be like having a good instinct level knowing of what is most important to you. Mm-hmm. So, like, you know, when I moved out, when I moved out, it was difficult, but when I started living on my own, the most important thing to me was I want to be self-sufficient. I want to be independent. That was peak. That was the peak, right? Mm-hmm. It didn't matter. You know, I was making $8 an hour. You know, I was making $8 an hour, and living on my own for $8 an hour was fucking horrible. Yeah. But
I can imagine.
It didn't like all the, like, the not being able to, you know, not being able to buy shit, you know, eating cereal and shit, you know, eating cereal for dinner sucked, but it wasn't worse. But being self-sufficient, being independent, and being on my own was what I wanted. And what was most important to me. So those other things were like, that's just part of the process. And I was willing to sacrifice all those things to have that. And it's the same thing. And it's the same thing like I do now, is like being able to be there for my kids and be able to be there for my wife and be able to have that relationship is the most important thing. And so if that means that my wife, you know, can stay home and stay home and take care of the kids and not be able to contribute to, you know, paying for things.
Yeah.
And it's tough, you know, it's tough being a single income
in this economy,
in this economy and living, you know, living in a house and all that kind of stuff. But that's, you know, the sacrifices, you know, I got a hot water heater that barely fucking works. You know, I live in an old ass house and I drive old ass cars and I can't just buy everything that I want, you know, but I wouldn't. But a brand new car is way less important to me than being able to spend time with my kids.
Yeah.
And so I think having like that instinct level knowing what I want, like what is most important, like in the hierarchy of things is kind of the most important thing. So I think, you know, for them, if it was like, if somebody in that situation, if I could like have like a sit down with them and have like an honest, like one-on-one conversation with them, be like, are you, you know, you look miserable. Are you miserable? And they were like, yeah. And they would be like, yeah, I want to fix that, but I don't know how. And we're like, well, what's the most important thing? You know, what is the most important thing in your life? You know, like for you at the moment, not what bills you have to pay, not all that kind of stuff. Like, but like actual, like if everything was taken away and you had absolutely nothing,
no running water,
what is something that what is something that you would still want to have, like that would still give your life a lot of meaning? And if it was like, if for them, if they were like having a good job and having my, you know, position or whatever, then okay, you know. But I doubt that's what it is. You know what I mean? I think they're, you know, they're good parents. They obviously love their kids.
Yeah.
But I think that their orientation on what they think is most important to make that happen for their kids, or the idea of what they need to do for their kids, is just wrong, or just not right. Like, and it seems like obviously it's just not really working for that, and it's making them at least look miserable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it sucks because, you know, I know at least it's harder to have that kind of, I've noticed it's a little bit harder to have that conversation with other parents.
Yeah, sure.
Because there's also so much in that world of parenting that I've seen, and I've had conversations with other parents where they're like, well, I need to be able to,
right.
If
I can't provide this, then I'm not a good parent.
Right. If I can't make sure that my kid, you know, if I can't make sure that my kids get to do 3 activities or whatever like that, then I'm not a good parent, and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, no, dude. Like, if you just, you know, because, you know, and you know, I never had any activities that I got to do as a kid. You know, my parents couldn't afford to do anything. You know, so I never got to do swim and gymnastics and all that other kind of stuff, you know. And my friends did, and I was jealous, and I was like, oh, that's, you know, that looks so cool and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, so I never got to do any of that stuff. But I got to do stuff with my parents that none of the other kids got to do. You know, anything that my dad was interested in, I was always involved in it, you know. You know, he liked guns and was like shooting, so I was always involved in that. If he was going to the gun range, I was going with him. If, you know, when he was cleaning his guns and making, you know, reloading ammo and stuff like that, I was always there helping him, and I was always involved in those kinds of things. And you know, my mom really likes to paint, and she does a lot of art. If she was painting and doing art, I was always involved in it, and so. so I got to do all that shit that none of those kids ever got to do. And they were always jealous of that. You know what I mean? They were like, oh, your dad, you get to go shooting. And they were always really wanting to do that. And they were like, oh, my dad won't let me, they won't let me join the gun club because at school, because you have to buy a rifle and it's really expensive. And I don't want to buy that, you know? And it was I mean, I try to do that with my kids, you know, if there's something that, you know, I've got tons and tons of hobbies and I'm the hobby hoarder.
The hobby hoarder. The hobby goblin.
So I always, I always involve my kids in any of that kind of stuff that I'm doing. If I'm, if I'm sewing something, I let them, sit there with me and help me. Obviously if they're trying to stick their hands and grab the shit while I stop them, but I involve them in that. And, I go through the process. Oh, I'm going to make something. Do you like this color? You like this, and maybe I'll make something for them and, involve them in anything. And then if they're interested in something, if they're interested in, astronomy or whatever, then, we'll go outside, we'll go look at the stars, we'll go look up stuff, and we'll go. Yeah. So you just do the interactive stuff with them, and they love it. They get a kick out of it. I'm enjoying it too, even if it's something I don't really care that much about, but they seem to be really interested in it. They really are excited about this. Then enjoy it with them.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. The only thing I would add to that in that respect is, the thing I said earlier is I think I figured out how to interact with that, which is exactly what you're describing. I would say, yeah, definitely. It's being attentive and active by just being present in so many ways. The thing I'll add is that I'd imagine that in your particular case, it's actually pretty easy relative to the ways that you're you're passionate about and your life orientation, in part because you've organized yourself that way. So that's it's both hand in hand. But like for instance, if there was a father whose dream was what he really wanted in life and what he was like really interested in was to become a incredible like immigration lawyer. Yeah. Right. Which is an incredibly difficult task of like going through years of studying all of this and to even begin to, go towards that. And, you necessarily have to make sacrifices in terms of like being present for your children in some ways. But, the equation that you make in that is to say that like I could be miserable being with my kids because I'm not pursuing something that's meaningful to me and demonstrating that I'm capable and that it's important for my kids to do the same thing. Right. And so, that equation looks different interpersonally. And then secondly, I would say is that one of the things that will become, especially because your kids are young, but one of the main things that becomes apparent, as in the word apparent, as your kids grow, as kids grow older, and you notice this in adults too, is that you start to notice those passions in them, and then you can as a responsible parent, it's about fostering that. So like, your kids probably don't need to be in gymnastics at 5. It's probably like they may not get a whole lot out of that. If you can, great, or whatever the case. It's not like so important. You should center your whole life around that thing. Yeah, but if they show an interest and they have a real talent for something, if being a responsible parent means seeing that in them and really fostering and making that a reality in their lives. And I think that most of the time what's informing what you're talking about, like with parents who are like, I need to be able to do this for my kids, is that, if you talk to them and you start to uncover that, you'll realize that so much of it is a sense of inadequacy that their parents weren't able to provide for them, or they're worried about appearing one way. Yeah. And it's like, if you orient, just like you're saying, if you orient your life around what is meaningful to you, then those things will sort themselves out. Like your children will notice. Right. So I think that's
absolutely,
that's Yeah, I think.
Yeah,
I think you do that. But by the way, I'm not criticizing your statement in
Yeah.
any way. I'm not saying that you don't do that for your children. I think you're very attentive. You and your wife are very good at noticing what makes your kids light up and tick. But and so I want to give you props for that as a parent, both of you guys. I think that we will continue the discussion of meaning and the revelation that I've had about it.
The revelation.
With regard to
revelation.
how boring progress is.
Boring, progress.
The boringness of progress.
True meaningful progress is quite boring.
I mean, you just think about a kid, right? It takes so fucking long for them to grow up, and then you realize when you look back at it that you're kind of like, damn, that was quick.
Well, and that's one of the things too that one of the things that I kind of realized when I got older, like as I get older, I kind of realize it more and more, and it is something that everyone has always told me would be the opposite. Is that older people, at least in my life, were always like this sense of like urgency when you're young, of like because as you get older, time moves a lot faster.
Yeah.
But this kind of sense of like, well, you got to do it. You have to do this now. If you're not doing this now, you're not gonna, like, it's not gonna happen. All these kinds of things, like this sense of like, oh well, if you don't go to if you don't go to college right now, you're not gonna be able to. You know, it's gonna, if you don't learn this right now, you're not gonna be able to learn it. If you get older, it's gonna get harder and harder to learn things, and so I kind of believe that, like, of the sense of like, oh fuck,
there's all this urgency.
Like if I fumble this now,
it's over.
It's over. And as I've kind of gotten older, I've kind of realized, as I've gotten older and I've learned new things and changed, careers and always learning different new things and finding things that I'm interested in, being kind of like, I got my whole fucking life to enjoy this shit. Yeah. If I'm 40 years old and I decide, you know what, I really want to do this, I'll be able to do it. I can do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so there's also an element of that too, in the sense of like, patience for it, and being like, you know what, this is something, I'd really like to, I'd love to save up all my, save up money and have money to go do trips and go to Japan or go to Europe and all that kind of stuff. And like, man, that's something that I really, really, really want. But I also like, you know what? I don't think right now would be the right time for it.
Yeah.
But I got a long time that I can that I can work on doing that.
Yeah.
And I'm okay if I don't get to go to Japan until I'm 50. Like, I'm okay with that, And I don't care, like that, and where a lot of other people seem to not share that.
I think that there's legitimacy to some kinds of urgencies, for sure. Because like the earlier
you don't want to sit as like a kid forever,
right? But there's urgencies to things that give you opportunities that like compound in your life, and those are they're obvious things.
Yeah,
but definitely I think any urgency that indicates that you would never be able to do it and otherwise is a false urgency.
Sure. Yeah.
I think for sure. And it's definitely those are things to be careful of.
Yeah, I mean, you see people online 50 years old that finally got their high school diploma, you know what I mean? Like, it happens. You know what I mean? It's never too late to finish high school.
I don't know if that's necessarily the message we're going for. All right, Alex.
Okay.
It has been over 2 hours, which means we are more than late. But
and I got to go start my car so it can start getting warm.
And I gotta pee.
Nice.
So.
Nice. I'm gonna go turn on my car so that it.
All right.
Because it needs a long time to warm up.
Otherwise it explodes.
No, it doesn't explode. It just won't go into
Drive.
It just won't go into. Well, no, it just won't get into final gear.